Now, let's get into it. What is a constitution? Secretariat, pull up these images so that we can understand what a constitution is, what a federation is, and how the constitutions of a federation are made. What you see here on the brownish one, we're making a comparison between a company and a country. That's our country, the Federation of Nigeria, that is supposed to be. The company is owned by what the constitution is to the country, is what the memo and article is to the company in terms of being brought into being by who. That is, who is it that makes the memo and articles of a company? Go to the next image. Next image. It is the owners of a company. You see the three layers of authority line. The body of shareholders, Johnson, Jude, Adeleke, and Boma, come together. They are the ones who are coming to form that company. So you see, at the topmost of that authority line is the body of shareholders being the owners of XYZ Limited. Let's call that company XYZ Limited. Only them in the second layer make their memo and article. That is, they decide in a meeting to say, we're going to form this company. We're going to go into agriculture or farming or whatever, or banking. Then they reduce all of what they have agreed to do into the document that is called Memorandum and Articles of Association. That memorandum is the part in which they are committing themselves to becoming a company. Article is the one in which they are talking about how they relate among themselves, who joins them, who leaves, who takes what, when there's debt, when there's profit, how do they share. Then it is after they have made that memo and article that they now hire a management team to run their company. Therefore, they can go back to whatever they were doing for themselves, and their company becomes an entity to be managed by that team they hire, the management team. Then you begin to see managing director, general manager, and all kinds of people in that management team, in that order. So the owners of the enterprise are the shareholders. The document that by which they create and define all of what will happen in that enterprise is the memo and article. And the management they hire will only have to go and do their bidding according to that memo and article. They are not the ones to touch anything in that memo and article. And then you come to the next image, comparing this company, ownership and management, hierarchy with a country. The next image, please. In the case of a country, I want us to pay attention. This is the key to our salvation. This is the key to getting rid of this invasion in terms of now, not dependent on anybody at all. In the case of a federation, the owners of the enterprise are the constituent peoples of the federation. So when you say we the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, those are the people that could be countries of their own. It is only in that sense. Apart from that, is if Nigeria was not occupying their space, the Yoruba would be on their own. The Igbo and the Ijo would be on their own. The Tiv could be on their own. And so you see, no. Yes, the constituent peoples of Nigeria are the shareholders and the owners of the enterprise Nigeria, who have exclusive jurisdiction. I repeat the word, exclusive jurisdiction to make their memo and articles, which in the case of a country and a federation is called constitution, by which they federate. And it is in that constitution that they settle the question of, yes, we want to be a union. Yes, we have to be a union of 5 units, of federating units. We have to be in 2 tiers or 3 tiers or 10 tiers. We have to, we define what the union office will be doing for us and what we do for ourselves. it is in that writing of the memo and articles, which is constitution, for that federation, that you now have a document that can bind the people into a union. And then in the third layer, in terms of the management of that enterprise, that is where you see the government in its three arms: executive, legislative, and judiciary. And so at the peak of the authority line is the people. That's the peoples of Nigeria who are bringing their lands and their people to form an entity to be called the Federation of Nigeria. They reduce it into writing, that agreement to unionize, to federate. That's where the constitution comes in. Only them can write it, no other person. It's not the management you hire that come to write your memo and article. What has happened to Nigeria since 1966 is that the management we hire, the government of the time, toppled the constitution, removed our own names from it, put their own names, and have been managing the seized control of our sovereignty and our assets since that time to this day.
Treason.
That is what happened to us. And it was on account of that, having then put our names as we come to the preamble of the Constitution. Look for that preamble and display it to tell you the fraud we are trying to resolve. When we say that the Constitution of Nigeria is a fraud, it is because in the preamble to that Constitution, the Absalom Abubakar and his co-travelers in 1999 claimed that we, the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, put a comma there, put a pause there. That we, the people, means one and only thing.
Mm-hmm.
We, the Yoruba, standing in Yoruba land. We, the Ijo, standing on Ijo land. We, the Beron, we, the Tiv, we, the Igbo, we, the Shekiri. That is the only meaning of that we, the people. Because there are some illiterate people who hold PhDs. To say that some of the time they ask us, was Absalom Abubakar and co, not Nigerians, and all of that. So that way, the people, against the backdrop of the thing what I've just explained, is the the constituent components of Nigerians armed with their sovereignty. Each of them, they are coming to become a federation, union of constitutions, union of sovereignties. And so you come to the second leg of that false claim. It says, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live in unity as indivisible and indissoluble country. Again, coming from the mouth of those constituent components, would they firmly resolve? Would they agree if they were never invited to meet? They were never invited. They were not invited in 1914. They were not invited in 1922. They were not invited in 1946, 54, 1963. It was always a middleman. It was always a middleman. Why has Nigeria refused? The proprietors of the Federation of Nigeria refused to invite the owners of the land that the British Crown conscripted into the Union of Nigeria from the fraud of amalgamation, from the treaties they obtained by deceit from semi-literate kings of the time. That is what we are still suffering from. What they handed over to Ahmadu Bello in 1960 is still sitting where it is, with all the guns and all the powers and rights that were taken. So you come to the third leg of that preamble that then says, do hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. If we go back to the authority line we were talking about, you will then see that it has been alleged by this management team, the government, that we, the owners of the lands that could be countries of their own, have solemnly that have come in our first, we have to come in our capacity as the owners of the land. That is the reason the National Assembly does not have mandate to make constitution. The mandate of the National Assembly as a part of that management team is limited to lawmaking. Any lawyer who tells you any other thing, tell him that Tony Nadi said he's illiterate and he's dishonest, because we have spoken about it for 25 years, from 1999. Any lawyer in Nigeria who does not understand that the National Assembly is not the body to make constitution for us, that lawyer is dishonest and could be illiterate on the subject. So we come back to that false claim. It is those three false claims that now have to be resolved, because the truth, how do I know that is a lie? You go to decree, first let's even go to 14.2a. Section 14.2a of the Constitution of Nigeria 1999, as bad as it is, that section 14.2a admitted that sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria, peoples of Nigeria, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. I'm quoting now section 14.2a, which is the universal truism on what can happen, because people will ask, how is the constitution of a federation made? The answer is in that section 14.2a that says sovereignty belongs to the peoples of Nigeria, belongs to the Yoruba in Yoruba land, belongs to the Ijo in Ijo land, belongs to the Igbo in Igbo land, Berom in Berom land, Edo in Edo land, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. Therefore, unless the peoples of Nigeria, in their capacities as the owners of their lands, in keeping with their sovereignty and their right to self-determination, make a document by sitting down, they identify themselves in their lands, they sit down and agree, then they write their agreement in what we then call constitution. And by the time they are going to that meeting, the only way to identify themselves as the ones who are going to federate was exactly what happened between 1954 and 1959, before the independence. The Yoruba made out their constitution as a country that was now going to negotiate with other countries. The Eastern region made out their constitution. The Northern region made their own in 1959, 57 to 59. The three of them made out their constitutions and then went to Lancaster House to unionize, to say, yes, we're going to create, instead of going off as separate countries, we're going to now create, units of, we're going to create a union office. That's the federal government. They mandated that, they donated the powers that became the responsibility and power of that federal government, that union office. They were the ones who listed what that union office would be doing for them. They were the ones who decided to be contributing 15% of their revenue to maintain that federal government and finance the limited responsibilities they allotted to that federal government. That was the period Awolowo could decide what to do with education, what to do with cocoa to make money, what to do with all the infrastructure he built, stadium, TV. That was the period Emma Obara was teaching the rest of the developing world what an economy is. Oji River Power Plant was built that powered Eastern Nigeria all the way to Port Harcourt and Calabar, stably, on coal. And you saw how countries of the world had to come to copy what they were doing. In the north, whatever Awolowo and Azikiwe and Emma Obara did, Ahmadu Bello was struggling to do. He had his groundnut pyramid, and they had their priorities, and they built a university when others started building university. So everybody was doing what they could best do with what they had in their sovereignty. And it was always just, you couldn't take any proposition to pass as law to the federal parliament of the time if the regional parliaments are not approved of it. So you don't go and sit in Abuja, if it was to be Abuja, the capital, and begin to introduce bills of what to do. Look at the kind of madness that just happened. We have a problem we need to resolve. And people sit in Abuja and say it is by going back to old national anthem. What happened to meeting to resolve the differences that have cost us a war, cost us millions of lives, made us poverty capital of this world? Under a constitution that guarantees everything we lament, the killings going on, the corruption that eats everything, the infrastructure that is zero, the election that we have seen so many times that our vote never counts. It is that constitution that is responsible for everything. So we go from knowing now that it is the constituent components, the peoples of Nigeria, in ownership and control of their sovereignty, make out a federation by discussion in the manner we have seen. And so what is our proof that that claim did not happen? Those three claims that we, the people, solemnly resolved to live together and wrote constitution. You go to the decree number 24 of 1999, by which Absalom Abaka smuggled that constitution into being. Decree number 24 of 1999 has only two sections. In subsection 1, subsection 3 of that section 1, it gave an instruction for the federal printer of the federal government, the press, the government press, they call it, not to tell the story of how the constitution was made. Because that decree number 24 told the story, Absalom Abubakar told the story of how he formed the committee, the Nikki Toby committee that went up and down wherever they choose to go to consult with whoever they chose to consult with. And they came back to the Supreme Council, Military Council, to say that most people wanted a return to 1979. We already had the story of 79 in how the Constituent Assembly was given something to rubber stamp. And the work they did on it, Obasanjo, on the 21st of September in 1978, introduced 17 amendments that toppled everything the Constituent Assembly did, and then put our signature to it to say it came from our people. It came from representation of our people. The question of who can make constitution, they nominated their friends. They nominated the willing tools from everywhere, the people they could control, to come and discuss constitution. What should have happened in 1977 if they wanted to make a constitution was to invite the Yoruba, the Ogoni, all of the owners of the lands to organize by election or selection, whatever, mandated with constituent powers, to come and discuss how to federate with other people. There is no other way. If you sit in Abuja and nominate, even if you nominate 5,000 people, two from every village, it still does not become the meeting with constituent powers. It is only when Yoruba sit in Yoruba land and mandate people, they give constituent powers to go and negotiate with those who have also done the same thing in their home, to decide two questions, whether they want to be in union or they don't want to be. And if they want to be, they then spell out the terms. All of what is contained in the constitution, whether it is 50 states or 30 states or 4 regions, it is at that point of discussion that they will agree on it. All of what is on the exclusive list, it is at that point that they will agree on it. All of the provisions that protect the citizen in chapter 2, it is at that point they insert everything. If they are not invited to any meeting and people who are seeking to conquer them now does everything, how does it become their constitution? That is the problem we have to solve. And that was why Nina set up just so that you don't miss track of what we're saying. That decree number 24 is evidence that we, the people of Nigeria, never met, never agreed, never wrote any constitution. Never. And so, as part of what we are doing to solve this problem, in 2007, we went to court after Pronaco, which was the meeting of the owners of the sovereignties. For the first time, Obasanjo quarreled, of course, we ignored him and carried on. And then we had an outcome that encouraged us to go to court to say that this constitution is a fraud. It cannot remain the basis of union. It cannot remain the basis of democracy. And what is democracy? Government of the people, by the people, for the people. If you don't settle the foundation, bring the second, the graphic on the polity, the politics, and the policy, so that we can see why what we call democracy in Nigeria cannot be called democracy. There are three, like a tree with root structure, the trunk and the foliage from which you get the leaf. The constitution is the polity. Oh, don't overheat the polity. You set up a fraud. You seize my land and all my assets. Ijaw is crying over their oil. Yoruba is crying over their port in Lagos. The Middle Belt is crying over the fact that they cannot touch gun to defend themselves from Fulani that is killing them. So it is in the constitution that all those things were rigged. The foundation of the country is the constitution. That's what you call the polity. It is that polity, that the constitution that defines the politics, like the pillars from the foundation. And then it is from the politics you now see the policies of whether we are doing well or we're not doing well, or whether economically, socially, whatever it is. The problem Nigeria has had is that we are building on a fraudulent, a non-existent constitution, and therefore our politics have been like, in shambles. And then the policies have been this one that has brought us to being the global capital of poverty. Now, the problem that has arisen is that the many years of this atrocity has brought us to where people are now more eager to leave the union. There are agitations all over the place. Biafran flags are flying on one side, Odua flag flying on the other. You saw the other day they invaded the government quarters in Ibadan. trying to take over their Yoruba land, to move away from the union of death that Nigeria has become for them. It's not different from the Middle Belt, where people have been slaughtered in the numbers we have seen. And so what NINAS and all the organizations involved did was to set up a 20-year plan from that 1999 to call a meeting of the owners of Nigeria and to get them to agree on what they want to do, because their sovereignty is inalienable. Their right to self-determination is inalienable. And we're not talking conjecture here. We are talking from instruments that came from the UN since 2007, which we directly participated in bringing about. Thank goodness Soyinka is still alive. Kofi Annan is gone. But what you see here is the 20-year plan by which we went step by step to organize so that it doesn't become Somalia. How we were going to get to where we form a consensus against these invaders that came from all over the Sahel. A consensus against the constitution they imposed, because they were the ones that imposed this constitution, just like the Boers in South Africa imposed the apartheid constitution that took the lands and the rights of the blacks in South Africa. And so we have painstakingly executed that plan. And that was what brought us to the December 16, 2020 constitutional force majeure. That is the enforcement of the sovereign will of the peoples of Nigeria. And in doing so, we do not owe any type of explanation to anybody who pretends to be in government house under a constitution that is a forgery. It is that forgery that enabled them to sell 3 million barrels of crude oil every day, sharing the money. You see how they are sharing it. Everything they are doing is mandated by that constitution. Let us run very quickly, because we now know how the constitution is made for a federation. We now know that it's the owners of the sovereignty standing on their land and meeting with one another, not the government, that can make constitution. We now know that the provisions they put in the place can decide everything.